Hey folks, and welcome to another quick blast through Crysis 3 on another GPU. Today we're going to be having a look at the GTX 960. Now, on previous videos on this channel I've tested higher end cars like the R9 280X, the GTX 770, and also the new budget cars like the GTX 1050 Ti. So I thought it would be quite interesting to see how something that comes in between that new and old bracket actually fares with this game. The GTX 960 was essentially billed as a replacement for the older Kepler-based GTX 770. Like the previous tests, we're going to be running everything at 1920 by 1080p on the high preset with 2x SMAA turned on and 16x anisotropic filtering, using the standard test bench of an Intel Core i5 4590 coupled with 8GB of DDR3 RAM. So if we take a quick recap of how the results have panned out so far, we can see that the GTX 770 sits at the top of the table with an average frame rate of 69 FPS. The R9 280X closely follows it with an average of 66, although its minimum frame rate is a negligible 1 FPS higher than the GTX 770. At the moment, the GTX 1050 Ti, it sits below these two old higher end cards with an average frame rate of 63 FPS and a minimum of 44, although it's probably worth bearing in mind that Crysis 3 is a few years old now, so this could simply be down to GPU optimization issues rather than the actual power of the card itself. So how does the GTX 960 fare? Well, I was quite surprised in that it actually came in at 11 FPS lower than the GTX 770 it was built to replace, at 58 FPS. The minimum FPS, however, it wasn't that low and it actually matched the GTX 1050 Ti with a minimum of 44. But don't let that put you off at all. I mean, this card, it is still a great card for gaming. So you could almost see this GTX 960 as sort of being a halfway house between new and old. On the one hand, these older cars like the 280X and the GTX 770, they brute force their way through games pretty well, but they've got really high power requirements. I mean, the GTX 770 that I test on, it requires two 8-pin PCIe power connectors. The GTX 1050 on the other hand, I guess it's at the forefront of efficiency and power saving. It requires no external power. The GTX 960, it only requires one 6-pin PCIe power connector, so it's going to be a great option for a lot of people out there who simply don't have a massive PSU to power these older cards. When it comes to cost, the GTX 1050 Ti, it still sits about £50 in the UK above the R9 280X and GTX 770, and the GTX 960, it kinda sits alongside those older cards, maybe a £10-15 or so higher, simply for its newer architecture, although you can actually find bargains. I mean, the one that I picked up in here, it cost me a total of £65, and to be perfectly honest with you, that's a steal in anybody's book. So there you have it folks, another GPU, another bargain, and another card that's well worth considering if you don't want to go higher than £100 or so on your GPU for your rig. It's still highly capable, and it'll play the majority of new games. Anything that a GTX 1050, a 1050 Ti or an RX 460 can play, you're going to be in the same ballpark with this GTX 960. So that's it for me folks, thanks again for watching this video. You can use those thumbs to tell me what you thought of it, and you can leave a comment down below and you can tell me what you think of the GTX 960. You can stick around because we're going to be benchmarking this card and a lot of others in the coming weeks, and I'll hopefully see you all again next time.